Deciding where to grow or move your business can be full of unexpected delays. Or you could go to Ohio. With billions invested in growth-ready sites, a dedicated team whose only job is to tackle red tape, and 0% corporate income tax, Ohio makes it easier for businesses to scale faster. In fact, Ohio is ranked the #1 state for business in America. Your move. Learn more at jobsohio.com.
Friends, welcome to Scott Fox After 9. This week is turning out to be a real doozy when it comes to information. On the pod today, you're going to hear a little bit of the congressional testimony of Dr. Anthony Fauci in America. Dr. Fauci has got a lot of questions to answer about the pandemic, and you are going to hear him in his own words coming up on this episode. Before I get to that, though, I've got so many different topics that I'm going to bounce around between today. I'm going to try and give you a little insight and a little context about a few of the issues that are facing us. One of the ones that I see as a pretty important issue here is the fact that flight attendants for WestJet are about to go on strike. They could walk off the job as early as Sunday, and I feel like that story isn't getting the media attention that it probably deserves. This is a big deal. Second biggest airline in Canada. We've got a lot of Canadians around the world right now vacationing and visiting family and friends, and flight attendants may walk off the job. For those who remember, last year, Air Canada flight attendants walked off the job as well. And at the time, we were having a debate about unpaid work. Apparently, that's exactly what's going on at WestJet. There's a policy, I guess, in the airline industry. Apparently, the way it works is that you don't actually start getting your hourly wage until the door closes and the plane is ready to take off. So all of the boarding process and things like that, the flight attendants aren't getting paid for. And I think when Canadians heard that last year, they generally sympathized with the flight attendants. Well, WestJet now wants a pay increase as well. And according to some new polling that is out from Abascus, if I'm not mistaken, the majority of Canadians side with the flight attendants. 85% side with the flight attendants. Very, very few are siding with the airline in this particular case. And that's fine. I think you should get paid when you're at work. And for every minute that you're on the job, you deserve to be paid for that. But I want to point this out in the name of being fair, because I feel like this issue has sort of been, what's the best way to say it? I feel like the issue has been somewhat clouded. So let me add a little bit of perspective. WestJet flight attendants are going to piggyback off of what Air Canada flight attendants fought for last year. They want to get paid more and they want to be compensated for the time that they're actually on the job. And I don't think anybody disagrees with them on that. But keep in mind, the WestJet flight attendants and the Air Canada flight attendants last year, the reason they were able to strike is because their current contract was either over or it's ending. In that contract, they agreed to work under the system that they're working under now. At some point, somebody went to the flight attendants and said, okay, you're going to make X number of dollars and you're on the clock as of when the plane door closes and then the passengers are yours. That's when you start getting paid. And the flight attendants agreed to that. So if they've now decided that that system no longer works for them, I don't blame them. I don't think it's a great system. But let's keep in mind here, they agreed to it for at least one contract and likely more. We don't need to start villainizing, and I'm not here to apologize for the airlines, but I do feel somewhat bad for them in that they're about to undergo a major shit kicking when it comes to public relations. And frankly, what the flight attendants are fighting right now is something they agreed to in their last contract. I think you've got to keep that in perspective because while you're always welcome to try and negotiate yourself a better deal, let's be honest about the stakes. Clearly, it wasn't that bad an idea if flight attendants ratified the last agreement. So whether they do or don't go on strike remains to be seen. I hope that WestJet can reach a deal with the flight attendants, namely because I don't want Canadians to get stranded abroad or in another province, and namely because I don't want people to be underpaid for the work that they do. But let's be reasonable here, and let's keep in mind, at one point, the system now that is apparently viciously unfair was something they agreed to do. So with that in mind, I want to move on to another flying topic, the topic of the Island Airport expansion in Toronto. This is turning out to be a juicy story. I had heard this the other day, but I didn't report on it because I get a lot of whistleblower stuff. People reach out to me all the time with quote unquote behind the scenes stuff, and I don't always run with it because I like to try and independently verify as much as I can, and I wasn't able to verify this before the rest of the mainstream media got on it. There is no shortage of publications that today are reporting there was a deal between Doug Ford and Mark Carney. Mark Carney really wants Alto high-speed rail from Quebec City to Toronto. While Doug Ford doesn't necessarily care one way or the other about Alto, he really wanted the Island Airport expansion. And apparently they had a gentleman's agreement. You support the high-speed rail, I'll support the airport expansion. Well, then public consultations came in, and I'm told over 80% of the people who responded to the public consultation said they were not in favor of expanding the Toronto Island Airport. Well, that's a pretty compelling number. Now the Prime Minister, with a by-election coming up in the Beaches East York riding of Toronto, has pulled the rug out from underneath Doug Ford and this Island Airport expansion. And apparently now Doug Ford is now not going to, or he's considering not, supporting Mark Carney's high-speed rail. My question is, and this should be the filter for these politicians, not making backroom deals. Hey, people don't want that, but I'll support it anyway if you support this thing that I want to do that people also don't want. Those backroom deals, I don't understand why those are being made. It's very simple. If the public doesn't want it, we shouldn't have it. It's very simple. The public said no. The answer is no. Now, I still don't think that this Island Airport expansion is settled yet. I firmly believe that in the future, probably not long from now, they're going to be expanding the Toronto Island Airport. I think Mark Carney really wants to try and win this Toronto by-election, and this is his insurance policy. No expansion of the Island Airport. But make no mistake, Toronto, once Mark Carney doesn't need your vote, that Island Airport is going to get expanded. Doug Ford is going to get his way. Whether you like it or not, they're going to ram this through. And they say there's a lot of economic benefit for Toronto. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I haven't heard a very compelling case. To me, I don't understand where the passengers are coming from. I don't know who around the world right now is thinking, God, I'd love to go to Toronto, but I'll be damned if I'm going to land at Pearson Airport. I want to land at the Island Airport. And if people do start coming to Toronto because they can land at the Island Airport, were they going to come anyway, or are they coming because they can land at the Island Airport? I'm wondering, is all this going to do is take passengers away from Pearson Airport, YYZ? I don't know how they come to the conclusion that this is going to have billions and billions of dollars of economic impact. I just don't see it. Maybe there will be more private jets landing, but I don't see a day when people are coming back from their vacation in Cancun and landing at the Toronto Island Airport. I just don't think there's going to be the demand for it, especially when we've got Pearson Airport not far away. Also not that convenient, but it is what it is. A lot of cities have airports that are not in the city center. I don't know if this is actually going to have any economic impact, but I'm open to hearing the argument. The person who is the transportation minister for Doug Ford in the Ontario PC government is Prabmeet Sarkaria. Here's him speaking yesterday about the Island Airport.
We've seen the federal government here listen to a small French group in Toronto, but we as the province will continue to push forward on a modernization of this airport. We urge the federal government to continue to consider that proposal because it's a proposal that makes sense for people that want to travel through air and have different options. And it's also about building big projects. If Prime Minister Carney and his team want to this is how they're going to treat bigger projects, I don't think you'll get much built.
He's probably absolutely right about that. The Carney government's approach to building large projects doesn't seem to be built on anything other than who they got lobbied by. The Alto high-speed rail. Doug Ford was supposed to support that if Mark Carney supported the Island Airport expansion. How about this? It seems like people in Toronto don't want the island airport expanded, or not yet. They're like me. They still want to see what the economic impact is going to be, and they want to see what the environmental impact is going to be. They also don't want the Alto high-speed rail. There's 2 projects that are going to cost billions, and the taxpayers have said, no, don't do it. I don't understand why politicians behind the scenes are working to try and make these things happen, even though the Canadian people have said they don't want it. Scary stuff. Something else I want to play for you, and it's something that I played the other day. It is a news clip from the CBC, and they were talking to a winemaker out in British Columbia. I want to play this again because I want to make sure a lot of people hear this, because I think that this is a perspective that most average Canadians that just kind of pay attention to the news, they assume Mark Carney is doing all the things he said he would do. I think they just sort of assume that everything is going pretty well. Listen to a wine producer explain the reality on the ground.
Taking American booze off the shelves. As a business owner, what do you make of this move?
Well, first, we were very dismayed, and I had to work with my U.S. rep, who is now putting together another order so we can get it down there before the new tariffs. But the ironic thing is, Chris, is that the 50% tariff that Mr. Trump is wanting to put on is still less than what every other province puts on us in Canada. And so, the illusion, or the free trade illusion that's coming out of Charlottetown, is really just that. I mean, this is just taking what they had said they were going to do last year, and they're just regurgitating it and repackaging it, but it's still nothing. But the fact is that it says the legal loopholes for allowing me to ship my wine across the country means I've got to get register every wine, do all these different things. But it still keeps the provincial markups in place. So if the premiers were serious, they would really open up Canada as an answer to Mr. Trump. But they're not. They haven't. It's a free trade illusion what they're doing right now.
Mark Carney and the premiers are not doing the things they said they would do. You just heard him say it. Even with the 50% tariff imposed by Donald Trump, it is still cheaper for alcohol makers, winemakers in particular, to ship their products south of the border than to send it from province to province. The big announcement in Charlottetown the other day, allowing Canadians to order direct from the manufacturer in any province. It's just an illusion. That's not my term. That's not what I'm saying. That's what a winemaker is saying. If you have the illusion that Canada's doing great and we're finally starting to make a little bit of progress and we're tearing down these interprovincial trade barriers and everything is tickety-boo, that doesn't match reality.
Take us through the day-to-day logistical headache of having these new threats imposed on small business owners in general, and that it could take effect by the end of the month. I mean, you talked about having to talk to your different partners and staff and trying to make sense of these different rules and regulation. What is that like for you on a day-to-day basis?
Well, we have a rep who brings our wine into Washington State. We're in 7 locations in Washington State right now. And he and I were working very hard on getting a pallet or 2 of wine done quickly so that we can get that down there before the August 19th deadline. We had been starting to work on our plan for the holidays and a large shipment going back to an East Coast U.S. state, and of course that's now on hold. So it's disappointing to have that tariff in there, but it's even more disappointing to have the Canadian premiers still do nothing. And that's the dirty little secret is all of these agreements do nothing to help us. And so as I talk to my staff, we're sort of between a rock and a hard place. We've just lost our USA channel, and the Canadian premiers are now making it harder to do business in Canada.
That's reality. That is coming from a business owner. That's coming from someone in the alcohol industry. That's coming from a winemaker. That's him telling you. This rosy picture they're painting on the news is not matching reality. Before I get to Dr. Fauci and talking about what's happening down in America right now, this episode is brought to you by my friends at The Caulking Store. They are in Mississauga at the border of Etobicoke at Renforth and the 401. Great website. You can order online at thecaulkingstore.com. And it doesn't matter. You could be a master builder. You could be a contractor. You could just be someone who's really into doing home renovations on your own. You don't need to go to a big box store, ask for help, and then watch someone in an apron reading the label in front of you and trying to understand it in real time with you right there. You could do that yourself. If you want an expert opinion, you should go to the experts. And the Caulking Store are Canadian owned and operated, satisfaction guaranteed. They've got a low price guarantee, seniors discounts, contractor pricing, and fast and reliable delivery. The Caulking Store carries all the top brands, and you know what? They're knowledgeable. And man, you can't replace that knowledge. If there's a project you're working on, seal it up properly and talk to my friends at the Caulking Store. It is thecaulkingstore.com.
Looking for a home that keeps you connected to Silicon Valley without the usual barriers to entry? The Gates in Morgan Hill by City Ventures is a walkable neighborhood near downtown restaurants, outdoor trails, and an easy commute to the Bay Area. It's a small town setting with access to major career hubs. Every home is all electric with buyer-owned solar included. With limited availability, now's the time to take a closer look. Discover your new home at cityventures.com. That's cityventures.com.
Dr. Fauci, were you ever made aware of gain-of-function research on monkeypox being conducted at the National Biodefense Analysis and Countermeasure Center and back at Fort Detrick?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Dr. Fauci, did the CIA ever transfer funds to NIH under an interagency agreement?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Why would Dr. Fauci assert his Fifth Amendment privilege? For those who don't know, your Fifth Amendment privilege is the right to not incriminate yourself. Quick history lesson. Dr. Fauci has received blanket immunity from Joe Biden in his final days in office. He granted Dr. Fauci immunity like most people have never seen before. He even granted him immunity for stuff we don't even know that Fauci may or may not have been involved in. Why would he do that? And why would he make the pardon retroactive? Does Dr. Fauci owe the people an explanation? Because when you read through the Fauci diary that is now out, you can see that he loves the attention. He is all about becoming famous. You can also tell that he was very interested in the research that was being done. Was it gain of function research? Did he use taxpayer dollars for that? Was there any actual science to justify some of the COVID measures that got imposed? And keep in mind, a lot of people died. We had people that lost their job because they didn't want to get a shot. They wanted a little more information, or they wanted to make their own medical decisions. They decided no to the shot or not yet, and they lost their job. We had people that were refused organ transplants because they refused to get the shot. That shot, Dr. Fauci led the charge. Safe and effective. Go get the shot. Well, now as it turns out, it wasn't particularly safe or effective. Certainly not effective anyway. Didn't stop you from getting it. So they pivoted. They said the line was, well, it makes the symptoms less severe. There's a lot of people who bought into that. They were ready to go to war to fight on behalf of that messaging that you have to get the shot. Turns out they may have been grossly misinformed, and misinformed from the top by Dr. Fauci. That's why he's being called to testify right now. Here's a little bit more.
Your conduct concerning federal records raises further questions. It is a crime to destroy federal records. Yet our investigation reveals your assistant diligently reported that she deleted tons of emails. In 2024, you testified that you did not delete federal records. Who's telling the truth? You or your assistant? The committee has obtained repeated instructions from you telling federal officials to delete communications. On February 2nd, 2020, one day after Origin's call, you told Francis Collins, please delete this email after you read it. The committee asked for your voluntary cooperation to come today. Your appearance had to be compelled by subpoena.
Yeah, Dr. Fauci doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to be accountable in any way for the decisions he made during COVID, and he certainly doesn't want to be accountable for or even talk about the research that led to all this. We still don't know where COVID came from. We still don't have a definitive answer from someone who's empowered to tell the truth. Did it really come from a wet market in Wuhan because somebody ate a bat and then transmitted it to somebody else, and then it circulated around the globe and killed tens of thousands of people. Where did it come from? Because there's a lot of people that believe it was developed in a lab. Why would it be developed in a lab? Some people think it was population control. We were just getting too big. We had to kill off a bunch of people as quickly as we could, and a pandemic was the way to do it. That's one of the theories that's out there. But there's also another theory that they really wanted mRNA vaccines in our bodies. And the best way to do it was to create a lot of fear about a new novel coronavirus that would make people so scared they'd be begging for this new shot full of mRNA. Where are we at now? Well, I think there's a lot of people who got the shot that probably wish they hadn't, if I'm being honest, and I'd put myself in that category. I got COVID at least once, maybe twice, and the second time I barely knew I had it. Maybe I didn't actually. It could have been a false positive. Remember all the tests that we were doing? Handing them out for free at the grocery stores. It's amazing how much money we spent on this. It is astounding how much the pharmaceutical industries made off of those vaccines. Canada was buying way more than we could ever use and shipping them around the world so that other people would get it too. They were hell-bent on getting those shots in people's arms. And all of that started with Dr. Fauci. Is it possible that COVID was developed in a lab? Is it possible that it was developed in the lab of virology in Wuhan? What about the Canadian lab? Is there any connection there? These are things that we need answered. Here's a little bit more of Senator Rand Paul talking to Dr. Fauci this morning.
You could not hide that your agency had funded the Wuhan research or your long history of defending gain-of-function research. The only alternative left was to argue that COVID-19 did not originate in the Wuhan lab. You were not a detached observer. You had an institutional interest in the public believing that federally funded research had nothing to do with the pandemic. It was a conflict of interest from the very beginning. The authors of the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2 privately had serious doubts about a natural origin. Within days, though, they flipped. And they all wrote in proximal origin that the virus was almost certainly not a laboratory construct. That paper was then used by the government and the media and you to discredit Americans who were asking the same questions that you and the authors were asking yourselves privately. You even cited proximal origin from the White House podium. You held it out as evidence that the virus could not have been engineered. But you didn't disclose your role in the discussions that preceded the writing of the paper. You did not disclose the author's original concerns. You did not reveal that you had been part of the paper, that you had read and offered editorial comments on the paper before it was published, before you began using it as evidence that it couldn't have originated in the lab. You did not disclose that you had immediately investigated yourself whether NIAID funding might be connected to the research. You did not tell the American people the full story. Duly released private messages indicate that the doubts with the authors and others didn't disappear after the publication. So while this was being waved at the White House to show that it couldn't come from the lab, the authors were still privately continuing to assign a meaningful probability to a laboratory origin.
Government officials were kept in the dark. Everybody was told, trust the science, trust the science. Dr. Fauci is the expert. He knows what he's doing. So governments did trust the science. And look where we are now. There's some people who will never, ever get a vaccine again. Never. And that's sad because I do believe that some of the vaccines out there are safe and effective. But the government went all in on trying to shame people into getting the shot. And you got to ask the question, why? Was this a natural occurring thing, this pandemic? Or were we lied to? Was this pandemic essentially created in a lab? And was it done to try and force all of us to get something that we didn't necessarily want and weren't ready to take? But we were told we had to, or you couldn't get on a plane. You couldn't get on a train. You would lose your job. We deserve more answers. Dr. Fauci pleading the fifth doesn't get us any closer to getting any answers.
So unless people have a medical exception, they will not be able to board a plane or a train in Canada if they are unvaccinated.
Want to get vaccinated? That's your choice. But don't think you can get on a plane or a train besides vaccinated people and put them at risk.
And if you make a choice, a personal choice, to not get vaccinated, then I will have no sympathy for you when you come to me and said, oh, but I can't go out to a restaurant with my friends, or I'm not being allowed to go to the gym, or my employer is telling me I have to continue to work from home. And bottom line is, if anyone who doesn't have a legitimate medical reason for not getting fully vaccinated chooses to not get vaccinated, there will be consequences.
People felt like they had no choice, and people are owed answers. So here's how it's got to go down. Heads have got to roll over this. Let's find out one way or the other. Did it occur in nature, or was COVID developed in a lab, and who allowed it to circulate around the world? Tens of thousands of people, maybe more, died because of COVID-19. Where did it come from? How did it spread? Who had a vested interest in getting us vaccinated? And you know what? If we can't get answers from the medical community, then it should probably fall on the politicians, the ones out there like Justin Trudeau that led a witch hunt against people who didn't want to get the shot. Do you remember when he ordered way more shots than there were Canadians? We spend so much taxpayer money on COVID-19 and nobody is going to be held accountable? I don't accept that. Somebody has got to be held accountable. I don't know if Fauci is talking yet. The hearing is happening in one of the screens I've got here in the studio, but I'm going to move on to other things. Whatever comes out of today, I will have that for you tomorrow on Scott Fox After 9. Yesterday, President Trump talking again.
We have the hottest car business. We're right now building more car plants that at any time in our history, Toyota just left Mexico. They're building, they just announced, they're building a $12 billion worth of plants in the United States, all because they want to avoid tariffs. They have no tariffs if they build their product here.
Yeah. So the USMCA, are you looking to update that?
I don't care. I mean, I don't really want to. I'd rather be independent. Here's the thing. Mexico and Canada need us. We don't need them. The deal is important for them. It's not important for us.
Little bit of President Trump yesterday talking to Fox and Friends. You know, when this happened, when that statement came out, the mainstream media blew it up as quick as they could because they know that's an easy way to try and get people angry. And they want you angry. They want you angry at the Americans and not thinking about the issues here in Canada. I'm going to say it again. You've got to, not you've, we've all got to do a better job at ignoring the day-to-day that comes out of Donald Trump. He says things for his own reasons. He's not talking to Canadians when he says that. He's talking to Americans. And he's trying to do the same thing with his people as our government is trying to do with us. Get us fired up about the other side. We have to get out of this news cycle where every time Donald Trump opens his mouth and says the word Canada, people start freaking out. It's not getting us anywhere. A deal is possible. Our prime minister swore he was the one to get it done. Now, he's not got a very good track record, especially after that Gordie Howe Bridge, but he swears he can get it done. And I think even Mark Carney is starting to feel the pressure because there's a whole bunch of people that voted for him a year ago that are starting to wonder, where are the results? I had my elbows up, I gave you my vote, and nothing's going on. Now we're facing the potential of 50% tariffs on some products. The Canadian dollar. We have a 70-cent dollar right now, and it looks like it's going to go a lot lower. By the way, on that topic, the folks over at Northern Perspective, another great digital outlet for news. They cover things from a conservative lens as well, very similar to me. They did an interesting report yesterday, and I'm not going to share it on my pod, but if you go looking for Northern Perspective, you'll find it. They appear to have uncovered evidence that Mark Carney, when he was the chairman of Brookfield, was actually betting against the Canadian dollar. They actually figured the Canadian dollar was going to drop, so they moved a lot of money out of Canada into U.S. dollars. For a private company to do that, okay, a lot of private companies might do that. It's not a secret that the Canadian dollar isn't doing well, and tariffs certainly aren't going to help. No deal with America is going to be disastrous. Most companies can see that. But most companies' CEOs don't go on to become the Prime Minister of Canada and try and lead the most patriotic charge since the war. What's going on? Did Brookfield short the Canadian dollar? There's a lot of investors that are. I'm hearing a lot of speculation from reputable people that they're expecting we'll have a 60-cent dollar before too long. A 60-cent dollar will be a disaster. We all love having our Canadian money, but holy cow, when the rest of the world deals in U.S. dollars and we're at 60 cents U.S., that is catastrophic for just about everything. Not even just what we import. Everything is going to get more expensive if we drop to a 60-cent dollar. But a lot of people think that's what's coming. Yesterday, the immigration minister, is it Lena Diab? Is that her name? She's a funny little person. She was making an announcement that they're going to open up more digital slots so many more Canadians can get a passport online or renew their passport online, just like we should be able to do in 2026. She got asked an interesting question about students, foreign students. That falls under her purview. Foreign students that are now being denied post-grad work permits. Listen to this.
Recently, the students from some provinces, especially from Ontario and Alberta, they are protesting because they are getting mass rejections for the post-graduation work permits. And right now, a protest is going on in Alberta. So, what is government doing about it? Is it targeted something, and why it is happening?
So, international students add value to our Canadian economy. There's no doubt about it. When I started in political life in 2013 as a provincial minister, we worked extremely hard to ensure that when international students came to our educational institutions, that they were welcomed, that they were looked after, and that they got a very good education. Henceforward, decade or so later, we started to see in Canada, in different parts of the country, that there were issues and challenges happening. And so a number of things had to happen in 2024. Now, and I'm proud of some decisions that were taken, but I would say many people across the country, whether it's the institutions themselves, whether it's the students themselves, whether it's Canadians, all groups. Your specific questions on PGWP is that there has been no change. It was always the case that non-credit are not entitled to these postgraduate work permit. So we have not changed any eligibility for that. We continue to work with provinces because the provinces are the ones that have the jurisdiction over the education component. And so we're sensitive to the needs of the provinces as well as the needs of Canadians and as well as the students. But I assure you, we've made no changes to our eligibility requirements since November 2024.
Does anybody understand what she's talking about? She may be the most, maybe, and it's a tough competition, but she may be the most incompetent of Mark Carney's ministers, the immigration minister, Lena Diab. I don't know if foreign students are being denied work permits or not. I have no idea. But let me just say this. When a Canadian goes to America to get an education, and there's a hell of a lot of them that are doing that, my own kid included, he did it, and I got another one going next year. When that happens, there are very, very strict rules. You can go, but you're going to pay an out-of-state fee. You're going to pay a tuition premium because you're an international student, and you cannot work. You cannot work. And when you cross to get your student visa, they also want to make sure that you've got the financial means to support yourself. Canada didn't do it anything like that. We brought in all these foreign students. Somebody, somewhere along the line, indicated to them that this could be a path to citizenship if they just came here to get a degree. And we were letting anybody who wanted to go out and work and take away jobs from people that live here. It's very, very, very simple. And I don't understand why this government can't figure it out. All we have to do is just follow the system the Americans follow. If somebody wants to come to Canada to study, you're coming to study. You've got to be able to financially support yourself. You're going to need to buy your own health insurance because you don't get to use our social safety net. You don't get any of the monthly handouts that come from the government. None of it. You're here for an education. Can you work? No, you can't. Does that lead to a work permit after you graduate? No, not necessarily. Unless you're some superstar in your field that we need working here in Canada, you got to go home after you graduate, just like Canadians do when they go to an American school. You got to leave when school is done. And if you want to come back, you got to reapply. Why can't we have basic, simple, common sense rules here in Canada? I don't know why the system is so messed up. Well, actually, I do. Look who's in charge of it. She didn't answer that question. All she would say is, well, nothing's different. Well, clearly something's different because there is students in Alberta and Ontario that are complaining that they're being denied work permits, whereas this would have been a rubber stamp at any other time. Figure the system out. Apparently, these post-secondary institutions heavily relied on that extra money coming from international students. So let our post-secondary institutions stand on their reputation. If you're over in India and you want to study at the University of Toronto, sure, absolutely. If you've got the grades to get in, good. But you don't get to access our social safety net. You will buy health insurance. No, you're not allowed to work when you're here. You have to have a place to stay when you come here, and you have to support yourself. And when you graduate, get out. Go home. If you want to work in Canada after having attended a Canadian school, go back to your country and apply from there. You don't get to stay. You don't get to claim asylum or any of that. It's costing the taxpayers way too much money, and it's taking away jobs from Canadians. And it should be Canada first. And with that, I will say thank you, friends, for checking into this episode of Scott Fox After 9. Another brand new episode coming your way tomorrow. I do have a silent date update that I'm going to be doing before the week's out, or if it carries into next week, it might have to go into next week as well. But either way, 2 more episodes still to come this week. Have yourself a great one. If you enjoyed this pod, hopefully it starts up some good conversations. Feel free to share it with whoever you think might enjoy it. Have a great day. I'll catch you right back here in less than 24 hours.
Oh yeah, look at my life, hey now, yeah. Oh yeah, look at my life out here on the road. Oh yeah, look at my life, hey now, yeah. Oh yeah, look at my life out here on the road.
Ready to love your floors again? At S&G Carpet & More, finding the perfect floor is easy. Choose from waterproof LVP, carpet, hardwood, and laminate, plus expert guidance, furniture moving, and professional installation start to finish. And with our no surprise guarantee, the price we quote is the price you pay. Visit sgcarpet.com or call 866-632-2773 to schedule your free in-home appointment.
S&G, more than carpet, where quality is affordable.